You're listening to the Canadian Union Podcast. Employees, my name is Scott. I am in the field right now, and I thought I have some time, so let me talk to you about the attendance support program. Your job requires you to come to work, right? I mean, it does. The expectation of the job is that you come to work, you put in the time, and at the end of the day, you get paid for the work. It's a simple idea. Some at the corporation are able to work from home, some are salary. For many of us, it's not all about the hourly work, but it is this expectation that you come and you do work. Simple process to remember: when you're sick or injured on the job or off the job, there's a process that's initiated: WCB, SNA, LTD. These are insurance programs to keep employees employed, and the hope is return to work. Not all employees are equal in their health. An employee that falls or is injured on the job will be assisted through workers' compensation, eventually returning or not. And SNA allows employees to be temporarily off work while they heal from injuries that have happened outside of the work hours. There are limits and eventual long-term consequences of these programs. They are not infinite and limited based on the laws that are governing them. And in the past many years, our SNA and LTD have been climbing. The claims have been climbing, only recently coming down. SNA is an employer-paid program, while LTD is an employee-paid program. Each cost is burdened to that payer. Statistically, there will always be a quantity of the workforce that will always be accessing these services. The unending job of keeping these numbers low is a problem worth looking into. Overall, the goal is to keep the use down to manageable levels. If you're an employee over the last many years, you've been saying, we need to hire more people. And I totally agree with that. There's this complexity of coming to work, and you wouldn't think of staffing as a complex idea, but it is. And if you have lots of work and you can't get it done, the suggestion from our end would be hire more people. But another would be to manage the current workforce better. Like, this is what many people connect with and rely upon to keep their costs down. Sorry about that. I had a phone call. Let me get back to it. If we manage people better, the costs stay the same, but the work output is increased. At a manageable level, this is a masterclass level idea, and over the years it has been a goal, if not the goal, when we're not prepared to hire more staff. Infrastructure is always degrading, and we as a city are expanding, which should mean that we're hiring or contracting out the increased workload. That's difficult as a union worker to say, but I can tell you that we're not doing either well. We're doing a little bit of it, but not what we need to. And there are going to be people who are looking to game the system. I've seen some crazy level doozies. They are rare, but their application of rules is to suit their needs, and they shine brighter and hotter than those who just simply come to work and use the program when they need to. For this episode to be understood, you need to be able to see how a system is designed is not always how it works, and that understanding there are exceptions to rules, and they should be part of a learning process. You should see no difference in an employee taking a day off while not sick and a mother taking a day off because their kid is sick. Yet they are different. In our society, the fraud is the same. The expectation or the exception to that rule is that the mother is likely caring for the next generation, the social contract that we're in on the next generation of workers. And while the other is merely taking a break from themselves, maybe it's a mental health day, they're not different. In our system, the same issues apply. Whatever your belief is on what an acceptable SNA claim would look like, there are rules on how the system works. And I'm only going to go into the relevant parts of the attendance support program. I can say they're not helping in the long run. You are likely not reading the rules to our attendance support program. I have them here. I've had 17 pages. Water Services talks about how the system works, and it varies based on the department you're in. I think you would only know if I were to ask you right now about the ASP is how many hours in the year you can miss or per quarter you can miss before you're into the program. And if you know, because the email came out, it's 36 hours a quarter. It used to be 50, now it's 36. And here's why it matters. The current attending support program is 17 pages long, and there are definitions, calculations, hedging, reinforcing seriousness, touching a line on reasons for your absence, be it medically or non-medically, descriptions of the stages, introduction into the corporate health consultant. You may not have heard that before. Talking about a supervisor having no opportunity but to enter a person into the first stage, but also in this different line, giving them authority not to enter them into the stage if it's non-culpable. We learn the complicated word of sustainment and the painful 18 months of improvement to get out of this program. It goes into medical, non-medical, disability, accommodation, and of course, the end of the line, innocent absenteeism, or as I like to call it, non-culpable absenteeism. Now, I could go on about how the program is a series of louvers. It's not easy to talk about this program because I do like the idea of this program. If I look inward, it's because I currently am well and I'm not suffering from absenteeism. But for those who are, makes for this potential medical stress leave situation that will cost us all in the end. Like it or not, some people are not as healthy as others. Most jobs do not test for a B4 or a bona fide occupational requirement, and I am constantly told that I am doing more physically than other employees, which means that people are not all made the same. And that's okay. Genetically, some people will get very ill at some point in their work life. And then you throw in a viral infection or a bacterial infection, slips and trips. The SNA program allows people to survive while they are recovering. And for those who are healthy or don't understand why they're not entitled to these extra days off, it presents a problem. It's complicated because I'm not even talking about returning to work with restrictions or permanent accommodations or dependency issues. We have tried to get personal days from the union in the collective agreement to no avail. It's already present in our current system, which is odd because I can't really speak to it because it's like hidden between the lines. There is a difference between committing fraud and utilizing a program, and I can tell you one is culpable and the other is not. And this program is designed for the non-culpable absenteeism or innocent absenteeism. The ASP is designed to help people who have problems coming to work, period. That's how it's sold. And like any good salesman, the details matter, and the small print is something that people gladly are ignorant about. And I want to tell you, you can't be ignorant about this small print. What's not being sold in this is that as people stop calling in sick, the plan adjusts about how much time a person can be off without triggering stages. And in a perfect system, once the employees improve their attendance, the program should be shut down. But let's be honest. People lie. People can abuse the system, but actually sick people have no option but to follow their doctor's advice on recovery. The abusers should get investigated. The legitimate claims are stuck in this gray area because if they're extremely sick, they kick out from SNA into LTD and they return because they've recovered enough or the chance that they're going to do a reoccurrence is low. The employees who is at risk is the one who, for all intents and purposes, has having a bad year, full of bad luck. For example, an employee who's struck in their vehicle, not their fault, and the Access SNA will return to work after triggering the attendance support program. Then let's say that same employee gets a bacterial infection caused by food poisoning, puts the employee out for another few weeks. And just as they think their luck is getting better, they get hit by a viral infection, which puts them on a totally different path to recovery. Now, if that car accident had just been more violent, they wouldn't have had that bacterial and viral infection, but the recovery would be more straightforward because it would be longer and not broken up. But you cannot know the future. Supervisors have to recognize and deal with this time being missed. And the employer, on the other hand, only sees an employee who cannot come to work. And could this employee also have an accommodation or a dependency problem that will shoot them in different programs? Yeah, perhaps. And one situation after the other, that ASP program forces the employees to advance stage by stage, worsening the problem for themselves. Now, our SNA system is good for workers. I would say it's tilted in the employee's favor, and it is up to the employee not to see the system's weaknesses and exploit it. This can be a tall order to complete because some people would rather see how far they can push the limits than to know where the line is. And to these people, I would say stop. You're screwing this up for the rest of us. Seriously, if you get caught, it's not just this hand-holding discipline, minor discipline thing. This is like a advanced discipline, potentially termination, because you're breaking the trust of the employee-employer relationship. The timelines for quarters are designed by the top 20% of the bad users. So if more people are sick, the average goes up. And if those really sick people stay sicker, and then the average goes way up. And if they get better, the average comes down because that top 20% is what they're looking at. Now, what happens when the average is far below the expected usage of the program? Does the program cease, or does it push its own limits? We're seeing that right now. 119 days equates to an average employee working 38 hours a week to just under 4 months off. And that means roughly 16 weeks of pay, or roughly 600 hours of paid S&A at 90% wages. And that's pretty good. To help a person get better, that's pretty good. And to trigger the ASP, you need only 37 hours in a quarter, 145 in a year. And if you progress continuously through stage 3 of the program, you will be brought to a point where they use this really nice language about how your employment opportunities will be assessed. And that is just a nice way of saying we're going to terminate you for cause because of innocent absenteeism. S&A requires users to bring an attending physician statement after 5 consecutive days off, yet a person will be on the program before they even hit the 5th day. What is wrong with this picture? The outside eyes will say nothing is wrong with this picture because it catches people. Now, I argue the other way. What is the point of our wonderful S&A system that allows a legitimate claim to go for 600 hours before it goes to LTD, but will fire that employee who misses far under that mark if it's broken up into non-consecutive claims? Now, if they're abusing the system, why are they not culpably disciplined, right? Like, the problem here for the employer is if I'm off a long amount of time, they're supposed to be able to cover me or have that business case to cover me. But if I'm off little chunks at a time, you can't plan for that, and you're calling people in for overtime. So the argument here is, are they calling people in for overtime to cover the shifts that you're off for? And I would say the answer to that is a resounding no. Now, what happens if an illness goes around the employees and all these employees are more concerned about not getting on the system, the program, and they just keep coming to work and getting more people sick? Is there a point where the averages just don't make sense to keep lowering? The attendance support program has one desired outcome, just one, to get employees to work. And the S&A program is a superb program with a few minor faults, and those faults should trigger discipline when abused. Instead, users' data is compiled and treated at a macro level. Just the program says it's not supposed to be the be-all and end-all, right? There's this important part of the ASP that it collects data and that it inputs by pay coding. But every system can be gamed. And let me show you how this one is. If I take unpaid days off, or I use vacation or lieu days, I can work around the system. Now, if I work from home, I might not call in sick. So for workers who have the option to work from home, it's pretty good for you, right? You're getting 100% pay for being sick, but it's wrong. And this also leads to the next and finally most expensive part of the problem after the termination. In a unionized environment, terminations are immediately grieved, without getting into why this has to do with a lot of duty of fair representation. I'll tell you that a grievance will go on a standard amount of meetings. There's time put into each grievance, and then it has to be scheduled to have these grievances. People have to come and meet. There's money there, people having to meet, taking time out of their day to argue these grievances. And then once it finally hits an impasse, which in this case it will go into an arbitration stage, which 2 years of time will roughly pass. Lawyers will be met, arguments will be made, arbitrators will be signed, hotels will be booked, people will be booked off. There are costs associated with an arbitration. Someone will say, hey, this is going to cost X dollars. So we're going to shoot out X times this percentage to the person that we terminated to see if they take the deal and we can settle out of court. Okay. It's usually confidential. And the only reason you would ever find out about it is someone says beyond the confidentiality agreement that this is happening. Now, put it in the hands of that person. They get fired for innocent absenteeism. Maybe their life turns around, or they get another job, or they're sitting on a couch and they have all these expenses, and this lump sum of money is coming their way, and the unions can say, don't take this money. We want to get your job back, but to you'll take the money, right? Now times that by a multiple amount of people who are getting terminated for innocent absenteeism, and now you can see where this cost gets out of hand. The long-term results of the ASP program will be sure to jaw drop the amount of money that they've spent on it, because it's not just data collection, it's fighting the way that the data has been collected. And let me get into this specifically with you here. Let's say you are sick, but your boss doesn't put your time in like that because I put in more than 60% of my time that day, and they end up just paying me to the end of the day, or they don't put my coding in right, or they put me down as an unpaid absence, or I take a leave of absence, or I use my vacation days, or there's all these ors. And as a union officer, when I'm arguing whether or not they went through the processes properly, I can say things like, why did the supervisor not just say, I'm not putting this guy in the program? It's obviously that it's not an issue. It's just a bad situation that's going to get better, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. People get sick, okay? They get injured, and some worse than others. Legitimate claims should be allowed to follow their course. There's already processes here. I am the biggest fan of getting the abusers off the system. I am. To clean up our LTD, don't even get me started. That's a whole different argument together. But the attendance support program could achieve this incredible result by just looking at the data for patterns of abuse. Innocent absenteeism, find ways of culpably disciplining this person into a termination level event. Okay, that's just how it's going to happen. It's not that hard to do. And I try and coach people on how to not have culpable situations happen to them. If they get in a car accident and they're not getting better, but they're not in a situation where they're going to be accommodated, or they're on the road to recovery, then fill their spot with someone else while they're off. And I know there's a whole argument on that. You can't choose what's going to happen to you in life. You can't. And we need to hire more people. And we know that a certain amount of people are going to use this program. And we know that we got to watch people and make sure that they make good choices. Most of us will use it as it's designed. And I think that's what we have to come away with here is, if the SNA program is being abused, that is a culpable problem, not a non-culpable one. And to argue that a person is using innocent absenteeism as their reason for being terminated, nay, I would say there's more likely a culpable reason for it. If you know someone who's in the ASP program, they're likely stressing themselves out, because the initial first stage, it was nothing. It was like getting a first discipline. No one thinks it's a big deal. I mean, it is a big deal, but we always downplay it. It's when your life starts going in worse directions, basically down the road of a 2-year where you're not doing anything but just trying to stay under the radar. But the program has triggers in it, levers that will automatically pull, and eventually I could turn into a situation where my employment is reviewed, and all because a lot of bad things happened. And people can say life's not fair. I'm totally on top of that. We've put in these insurance programs, WCB, SNA, LTD. We put these programs in because life happens, and we never know what it's going to happen to us. For those people, I want you to support them. I want you to be there for them and make it so that they understand that they have some people who are thinking about them and support them and want them to get better and understand the kind of stress they're in right now. There you go. Thanks for listening.